Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. So this is Survey by Gina A. Pond, Part 1, Prologue, Chapter 1, Kia. Why did I agree to go to bonfire night? I thought as I was pulled along by the crowds. 'Cause that lunatic physicist asked you to go in front of everyone and you couldn't say no, I sighed. Good thing I have Amina covering for me with Uncle Faisal. Allah take pity on me. My tablet buzzed, pulling my attention from the enveloping sea of people. Where are you? Nigel texted. We're leaving the Eagle. I'm near All Saints Church, walking towards the Common. I stopped next to an old brick garage to get out of the flow of people while I replied. I let out a sigh of relief. The tablet buzzed again. Stay there. We'll come get you. I smiled and shook my head. Okay, I texted back, relieved that I didn't have to push my way through the crowd. That helped me relax a little, and I just focused on breathing. The tightness in my chest eased a bit, though I kept watching the crowd, just in case my cousins decided to come looking for me. I shouldn't have said no and stayed home, but Amina wanted to go with her British boyfriend, so I sighed again. The crowd got bigger as I waited, and my chest started to feel tight again. I took deep breaths, but I could feel the panic starting to rise. No, not here, not now, I told the memories that were rising up. I felt my eyes tearing up, and I began to pace along the wall. Allah, help me. I wildly looked around for refuge. There, the Jesus College gate, just across the street. My mind focused on that gate as if it were a heavenly portal. I left the safety of my corner and made my way to that shining beacon, pushing my way through the crowd of chattering people. The fireworks started as I got close to the gate. I put my hands over my ears to try to block them out, but the noise reverberated through my body. I ran blindly inside and down the path as memories took over my mind. A flash, smoke, debris, the smell of fire and blood. Mama, Papa, why aren't you moving? I crawled over the rubble-strewn floor to touch my mother's hand. It was warm, but Mama didn't respond to my touch. Mama, I screamed. Papa! The flashes and booms kept shaking the house, raining dust and broken glass on me. I screamed and cried, holding my mother's hand. I ran to the small building at the end of the path. Reaching the porter's lodge entrance, I flung the door open and scrambled inside. Slamming it shut, I put my back to the door, still holding my hands over my ears. Oi! Who's slamming my door? Said a man from the doorway in the back of the office. Oh no, I thought, shrinking in reaction to the male voice. I moved along the wall to the corner of the room, slid down it, and curled into a ball with my hands over my head. The fireworks made me flinch again, especially the louder booms. There was a smell of fire and dirt in my nose. I tried to breathe, but all I could manage was short gasps. Allah help me, I whispered to myself over and over. I felt lightheaded. I couldn't move or think past the sounds of the fireworks. A shadow fell across my feet. A large man in a dark suit and black headphones, who I assumed was the porter, knelt down in front of me. Are you okay, love? He said, gently this time. I looked up into the man's concerned-looking eyes and shook my head. The man took the pair of headphones off his own ears and put them over mine. The noise of the fireworks disappeared. There was blessed silence. I burst into tears. With the quiet of the headphones, I was able to calm myself down a little and take deeper breaths. After a few moments, the porter stood and held out a hand. I took it and stood up, letting him steer me to the couch. My mind was still a whirl of memories. I watched as the porter shuffled around the office, plugging in a kettle and bringing out a tray with a teapot and cups and a plate of biscuits. He flinched every so often as he did so. Once the water boiled and the teapot was filled, the porter set the tray on the low table in front of the couch. You were in the war? I heard him say through the headphones. I nodded. Ah, poor love, no wonder. Well, you keep them headphones on, and I'll fix you a cuppa. My name's Gerald. Jerry to my friends. Tried to speak, coughed, then tried again. Thank you, Gerald, I managed. I'm Kia. Jerry, you're a friend. I was in the war too, in the UN peacekeeping force. When I left the forces, I didn't want to spend my days sitting at home and staring at the telly, so my friend got me the job here. But, well, PTSD is a bitch and bonfire night is hard. That's why I have those headphones you got on. Brilliant things, those. He poured tea while he was talking and handed me a cup. I took it in both hands and took a slow sip. The warmth of the tea in the cup seemed to work its way from my hands to the rest of my body, calming me even further. That's better, yeah? He asked. I nodded again. I lost my parents in the bombings. They dug me out of the house after a few days. I don't remember how long it was. How old are you? 6. Blimey, that young. How did you get here? I took another sip of tea. My uncle. He moved to London before I was born. He went to Oxford, you see. When the war started, my parents asked him to take me in if anything happened to them. So when they bombed the town, he rushed over to find out what happened. He's pretty wealthy, so he was able to bribe his way in. He was there when they pulled me out. Took me right to his plane and brought me here. Is your uncle good to you? He asked. I felt the blood drain from my face. I'm grateful that he provides for me and has let me go to school, I said flatly. I didn't look Jerry in the eyes when I said it. I see. Well, he started to say, when the outer door slammed open again. Nigel came storming in. Jerry and I both jumped. Kia, he said, panting. Are you okay? Oi, what you slamming my door for? Don't you have any manners? Jerry said, raising his voice. Oh, sorry, sir. I was worried about Kia, you see, and, well, we tracked her tablet to here, and, well, he grimaced and scrubbed his hand through his hair. It's okay, Jerry, I said. This is my friend Nigel. I was supposed to meet him over by the church, but then the fireworks went off. He worries about me a lot. Jerry nodded. Ah, right then. Well, any friend of Kia's is a friend of mine. Close the door and pull up a chair. You can pour your own tea, though. Oh, thanks, Nigel said, closing the door and pulling a chair over from the other side of the room. He didn't say anything as Jerry handed him a teacup and Nigel sorted his tea out. He took a drink, put down the cup and said, I should let the rest of them know that I found you, so you don't end up with 20 folks in here. I would appreciate that, said Jerry, rather dryly. Nigel tapped out the message, then asked again, Are you really okay, Kia? No, she's not, you stupid git, scolded Jerry, before I could answer. What the bloody hell were you thinking asking her out to the fireworks on bonfire night? If you're her friend, you should know better than that. What? Nigel stared at me, and I looked down at the cup in my hands. Oh, fuck me, I wasn't thinking at all. Oh, shit, I'm sorry, Kia. It's okay, I started to say. No, it's not, Kia, Jerry interrupted. PTSD is no joke, no matter how it happened, especially when it comes from war. I know what they did to those towns, Kia. I was there. You have every right to feel fear when there's loud noises going off. The good thing, though, is that tonight you're not alone. Right, Nigel? Right. The two men looked at each other as if they came to some sort of pact. I sighed. Nigel eyed the headphones I was wearing. Hey, where did you get those headphones? They're brilliant. Jerry smiled. Online. Where else? Well, I'm going to pick up some for Kia, then. You don't have to, Nigel, really, I said. Yes, I do. It's my fault you got hurt tonight, and I want to make sure that the fireworks don't bother you like that again. Jerry smiled wider and pulled out his tablet. I can send you the listing for these, he said. One of my buddies in the SAS got me my first pair. They're a godsend. They're good for after football matches, too. Nigel tapped his tablet to Jerry's, and it chimed, confirming that it had sent the link. I smiled, amazed at how easily Nigel could charm anyone. You're in the SAS? Nigel asked. A tiny bit of awe in his voice. Yep, Jerry replied. He proceeded to tell us some funny stories about his days in training. Nigel asked a lot of questions, but when it came out that they were both involved in the Assassin's Guild game, they were off. Soon they had me laughing and forgetting about the war entirely, and the stories only got wilder and funnier as the hours went on. Just before midnight, my tablet buzzed once more. Where are you? Amina texted. The fireworks are over. Oh, sorry. Something came up, and I'm at the Jesus College Porter's Lodge, I replied. No worries, she texted back. Philip and I aren't too far from you then. We'll meet you there. Okay. I put down my tablet. Amina? Asked Nigel. I nodded. I took off the headphones and handed them back to Jerry. Thank you for everything. It was my pleasure. Here, he said, tapping my tablet with his. That's my contact information. If you ever need anything, you call, right? Thank you, I will, I replied. There was a knock at the door. Jerry opened it, letting Amina and Philip in. They greeted Jerry and Nigel, then Amina said, Ready to get going? I nodded, adjusting my hijab, and stood. Hey, Kia, I'll see you tomorrow? Asked Nigel. Yeah, I'll be in the lab later in the afternoon, I said. Thanks again, Jerry. Good night, Kia, he said, and Amina led me out into the night. Nigel. I waited for the door to the office to close, then turned to Gerald and said, Thanks for taking care of her, and yeah, I should have known better. I just didn't think. Gerald narrowed his eyes. There's more to her story, isn't there? Her uncle. I nodded. Yeah, he's a cunt to her. She won't talk about it, but I'm certain of it. Old school Indian then, huh? He asked. I nodded again, and Gerald shook his head. You be careful then. There's no telling what he could do to her if he thinks she's been ruined by you or other men. Honor killings are illegal, even by Indian law, but there are a lot of ways to make death look like an accident. I stared him in the eyes, realizing he was serious. Would he really do that? I asked. If he thinks she's dishonored the family, yeah. I didn't approve of the war, but there's a reason why it happened. Shit, I said. Then I had a thought. You want to be on our list for Kia? List? Yeah, a few months ago her uncle sent one of her male cousins who was studying here on her to spy for him. Thing was, he was into more than just spying on her. He started harassing her, trying to force her to marry him. She didn't say anything about it, but I knew something was wrong, you know. Then one day the guy made the mistake of doing it at lunch in front of us. She told us just to ignore him, but, well, she's my friend, right? So I got some of my assassin's mates together and we paid him a little midnight visit. We made it very clear that if he went near her again, well... Yes, I'm sure you did, Gerald said with a grin. Did he stop? Oh, yeah, but, well, the day after that, Kia wasn't in the lab and didn't come back for a few days. When she finally did come back, she just said she'd been sick, but she flinched a lot when people tried to touch her. I know that cunt must have beaten her for what we did. I frowned. I still feel guilty for that. Anyway, shortly after that, I sorted out a dead man's switch for her. She used to text me every night after she gets home so that I know she's okay. She thinks it's silly, but I asked her to humor me, so she does it. Just at that moment, my tablet buzzed. It was from Kia. At Amina's apartment. See you tomorrow. Okay, I replied. That her? Gerald asked. I nodded. Right, count me in. She's a sweet girl, and I don't want anything to happen to her. If you need help, let me know. Us SAS types don't really retire, you know. We just get old. The porter held out his tablet, and I tapped it to mine, exchanging our contacts. I gave a wide smile and stuck out my hand. Thank you, sir. Call me Jerry, eh? Right. Night, Jerry. The porter nodded. Off with you now. You gotta lock the gates for the night. I waved as I walked through the door and headed home. Chapter 2. Nigel. I ran towards the tree our group sat under with my heavy backpack full of drinks slapping against my back. Watch out! I yelled before I jumped over the blanket and landed on the other side, nearly running into another group of people. Shit, sorry, I said to them, then turned back to our blanket. Kia, Amina, Philip, Rafi, and the rest of the regular crew were all there laughing at my near miss. I flopped down next to Kia. You need to let these sit for a minute before you open them, I cautioned, dumping the sodas on the blanket. Have they started yet? No, you're right on time, Kia said. Good. I pulled up my travel pillow and put it against the tree so I could lean on it. Someone handed me a cookie and someone else handed me some milk. I gratefully gulped the milk down. Kia laughed. No one's going to take the milk from you. Hey, you never know. She shook her head with a smile. Why are you so late, Nige? Rafi asked. I sighed. Last minute call with Houston. Some stupid git was trying to tell me that he knew my engines better than I did. Uh-oh, said Rafi. You didn't rough him up too much, did you? Nah, he's not a bad engineer, just misguided. Although he did have a good tweak that might improve fuel consumption. Shh, interrupted Amina. They're starting. I shut up and gave my full attention to Peter Rabbit. It was my favorite story, and I never missed a Sheila and her Dog Society story time when they were reading it. Funnily enough, no one really ribbed me about it, at least not to my face. The reader was particularly good, and as I usually did, I teared up at the end. I wiped my eyes on my sleeve, and the rest of the crew started packing up. Amina and Philip left first. Have to study for exams, Amina said. We all said our goodbyes, and after a few minutes, it was just me and Kia left. Kia sighed. I think people think we're a couple, Nigel. Really? I asked, a bit confused. My uncle thought so. That's why he sicked my cousin on me. Listen, Nigel... Oh, Lord, that's why? Bloody hell. People see a man and a woman being friends and they automatically assume romance? What a pain in the ass. Kia laughed. Okay, now I'm confused because I thought, well... I do like you a lot, Kia. You're my best friend. More like the sister I never had, really. You get me, and you get the physics and my work, like I get yours, right? Yes, she said. To tell you the truth, romance is a real pain in the ass. All that fuss for 5 minutes of squidging. Messy, too. Ew, no. I shook my head. I mean, I think I'm probably asexual if you want to be official about it, but whatever. Physics is what I'm married to, and I don't think anyone can really come between me and it. Besides, when you finally find someone you want to marry and have sprogs with, I want to be that crazy uncle that does all the weird shit and then takes them for their first beer or chip buddy or whatever. Kia stared at me in shock for a moment, then burst out laughing. Nigel, you are a force of nature, I swear. I shrugged. I'm only what God, Allah, or whoever made me. That is true. She looked at her watch. Do you mind if I pray? No. Do you want me to leave while you do it? You don't have to. It won't take long. She pulled out her tablet, faced herself in the right direction, put the tablet down, and started the ritual prayer. I always liked watching her pray. It was utterly fascinating. For some reason, when she spoke the Arabic prayer, she seemed to have a glow about her. Sometimes I wondered if she'd already be an imam in one of the more modern sects. She always had that same kind of vibe that the priestly types I talked to once in a while had. I grinned and let her peacefulness wash over me. It was always soothing. It made me wish that I could bring peace to the rest of her life. Pluck it! I let out a breath that I didn't know I'd been holding. I saw Kia visibly relax as the college officials finished the graduation ceremony. I wanted to shout and clap, but I also didn't want to get kicked out. As she filed out to the courtyard with the rest of the graduates, I made my way through the crowd, finally making it over to where Kia stood. I grabbed her in a bear hug and twirled her around. She let out a scream. Nigel, put me down, she said, laughing. Woohoo! I yelled. Kia blushed and grinned. I felt like a proud uncle, or maybe big brother. I was still angry that her cunt of an uncle, or any of her family, hadn't bothered to show up. But I kept my game face on and smiled wide. So, to the Eagle then? I asked the crowd, taking the cheers as an affirmative. We headed out, Kia leading the way. Of course, the pub was busy when we got there, but we managed to find seats. I went to the bar to get drinks, bringing back a beer for me and a drink for Kia. She looked at the red liquid dubiously. What is this? She asked. I took a swig of beer. I promise you it's chemically inoffensive. It's called a Shirley Temple. Just soda water, grenadine syrup, and lime juice. I told them to leave out the cherry since I think they're usually soaked in booze. Kia took a tentative sip. Gah! It's so sweet. She laughed. It's not bad, though. It might grow on me. I grinned and lifted my glass. Congratulations, Dr. Hassan, one of the most brilliant minds on the planet. I clinked it with hers, and the rest of the table shouted, Hear, hear! Kia turned bright pink and tried to hide her face in her hijab. The conversation continued until the food came out, and then everyone ate with gusto. Are hamburgers halal? I asked, as she started to eat. This one is. It's a vat burger, and they were declared halal a couple 100 years ago, apparently. They'd better be, because my cousins scarf them down all the time, she replied. I frowned. I'm still mad that your uncle couldn't be arsed to show up. Kia shrugged. I'm okay with it, Nigel, really. The people who are most important to me were there, and that's enough. I grinned and started in on my fish and chips. Still, well, I suppose you're right. I looked around. Everyone else was engaged in conversation with other people. So, Kia, I kind of have a surprise for you, I said in a low tone. Kind of a graduation gift. A surprise? She asked, with a smile. A good one, I hope. I think it is. Well, what is it? I took another swig of beer. I put your project in for Trinity. Kia's eyes went wide. You did what? I put your project in for Trinity. And you waited until now to tell me? She frowned. Damn it, I thought this wasn't how it's supposed to go. Well, yeah, because if I asked you, you wouldn't have done it. But weren't the scientists supposed to write up these lengthy proposals? I nodded. I sent them your PhD thesis and filled out the forms. It wasn't hard. Don't you want a chance to see if your AGI theories will work? She absently played with one of her chips. I do, but... But nothing. You're one of the greatest minds in computing since von Neumann or even Turing. Your AGI design will revolutionize humanity. And I'm not just saying that to be nice, Kia. I've talked to others in the lab. They say the same thing. Your project should be on Trinity Station, Dr. Kia Hassan. I looked her in the eyes. Just as much or maybe even more so than my engines. Her eyebrows lifted into her job and her eyes were wide. You really think that? She asked in nearly a whisper. I do, and that's saying a lot since I know I'm a selfish, arrogant ass, I said with a smile. She laughed, then grabbed a napkin and carefully wiped her eyes around her makeup. Oi, Nige, you making Kia cry on her graduation day? What kind of monster are you? Rafi yelled across the table. Kia waved her hand. It's okay, Rafi. He was actually giving me a compliment. A very nice one. Rafi widened his eyes, came around the table and put a hand on my forehead. He doesn't feel feverish. He then picked up my beer, sniffed it, and took a swig. The beer tastes okay. Damn, Kia, you might tame this wily bastard yet. Everyone laughed. I doubt that, Kia said. The man's a force of nature. True that, said Amina. Everyone else went back to talking, and I leaned in closer to Kia. Listen, the decisions haven't been made yet. It'll be another few months before they announce the mission specialist. Just think about it, okay? All right, Nigel. I'll think about it, she said. But I heard a note of defeat in her voice. I really want to kill that cunt of an uncle of hers, I thought. But out loud I said, So, who brought the cake? A few days later, I was having my weekly tea with Jerry. Initially, I figured since he was on the list, it would be a good idea to meet with him regularly to get to know him better. Thing was, he was a pretty awesome guy. He gave good advice. And just like Kia, he seemed to just get me. Unlike her, though, he didn't put up with my shit and never hesitated to give me a piece of his mind if he thought I needed it. I like that about him. Her project needs to be on that mission, Jerry. I just know it. But that bastard probably won't let her go, I complained, as he handed me a cup of tea. He nodded as he sat back in his chair with his own cup. Are you sure her project's going to get selected? Of course I will. It's brilliant work. If they don't, they're stupid. I know a lot of the committee. They'll see the usefulness of it. I wouldn't be surprised if the Indochina bloc decided to fund it outright. They're always hot on new tech. It's got to be her decision, lad. You know that. She has so little choice in her life already. You can't be like her uncle and try to force her into it. I frowned into my teacup. I know, but God, she's the brightest mind Earth has in computer science. It'd be such a waste for her to stay on planet and not see her work come to life. Jerry chuckled. You want to see it too, I'm guessing. Well, yeah, why wouldn't I? Think of it. A sentient high-order quantum computer? Who knows how far that kind of AGI could advance human science? And with Kia as its mom, it would be amazing. Huh. I never thought about it like that. I suppose AIs kind of scare me. I mean, what if they can't learn morality or determine right from wrong? Yeah, but with Kia teaching it, I said, well, she's good and kind and, well, not like me. I'd teach an AI or even a kid bad habits. She's just a human being, Nigel. She's no saint, Jerry said. I don't know, Jerry. Have you ever seen her pray? I asked. The porter shook his head. She has this glow about her. I mean, I don't believe in God, but when I watch her pray, I think I can believe in some sort of intelligence to the universe. Sometimes she comes off like the folks in seminary without the long theology sermons. Jerry chuckled. They do like to hear themselves talk, don't they? I nodded. He put his cup down. Listen, Nigel, like I said, you can't force her into this if her project is accepted. She's got to decide if she's going to do it, and if she wants it enough to stand up to the bastard. If she does, though, we have to be ready for the fallout because you know what his answer will be. Yeah, you're right, I said, and finished my tea. Chapter 3. Kia. Meet at the Eagle for lunch. I'm buying. texted Nigel in our group chat. I sighed and put my tablet down. I couldn't concentrate on my work anyway, since my arms were sore from doing housework the night before, so I picked up the tablet again. Okay, I replied. Be there shortly. I turned off my computer, picked up my purse, and walked down to the pub. It just opened, and Nigel was sitting at one of the larger tables inside with Rafi. I was surprised at that, since Rafi had just gotten a new job with the Swiss embassy. Hi, Nigel. Nigel waved as he sipped his drink. Good to see you, Rafi. They let you out of the embassy for lunch up here? Rafi smiled widely at me. Hey, Kia. Of course they did. It's Swiss National Day today. Decided to take the week off anyway, since I haven't had my summer holiday yet. Then this guy demanded that we meet for lunch. Luckily, I was in the area. Nigel snorted. You came up yesterday because you heard the news first, since you work in the Swiss PR office. News? I asked. I want to wait until everyone gets here, Nigel said, with a wide grin. The others came in just as my soda water arrived. Nigel had even invited Jerry, who came over, patted me on the shoulder, and asked, How you doing, Kia? Haven't seen you in a while. I'm okay, Jerry, I said. He narrowed his eyes at me. Really? I promise I'll come for tea later this week. He nodded, then sat down. When everyone had ordered drinks and food, Nigel stood up. So, if you haven't seen it yet, guess who's the chief engineer of Trinity Station? Everyone looked confused. Nige, I thought you already were, asked Amina. Well, now it's officially official. They had a press conference this morning and named the senior crew and critical staff. Oh, Lord, said Amina. They've publicly gone and called him something important. Anyone got a pin to pop that ego? I'm paying for lunch, Nigel said, pretending to look hurt, as we all laughed. Congrats, mate, said Philip. Jerry raised his glass, and the rest of us followed. Our food came, and between bites, we all gave Nigel a good-natured ribbing about his ego. Well, just you wait. I'll probably be asking some of you to come and work on it, Nigel said, pointing one of his chips at us. When do you head to the U.S., then? Asked Rafi. September 1st is when we start astronaut training. He gave me a significant look, but I ignored it. Thankfully, I can take all my meetings from here while they get all the visa stuff sorted out. Oh, and get this. I get diplomatic immunity while I'm there. Can you believe it? Jerry laughed. The U.S. won't know what hit it. Oh, can you imagine? I said. Et tu, Kia, Nigel said, then stuck his tongue out at me. I can't help it if you're an easy target, Nigel, I replied. After lunch, most of our group left to go back to work, leaving just me, Nigel, and Rafi at the table. Leaning toward me, Nigel lowered his voice and said, This means I'm on the selection committee, by the way. Nigel, don't you dare do anything to influence the other committee members. He raised his eyebrows. I mean it, Nigel. All right, I promise. They won't need me to convince them anyway, he said, and took a swig of beer. Besides, they're announcing the selections at the end of this week, so you'll know soon enough. He grinned like a cat in cream. I just sighed. Leave it alone, Nige, Rafi said. Right. Are you heading back to the lab, Kia? Nigel asked. I nodded. I was going to, but I think I might go home. You okay? Nigel asked, looking worried. Yeah, I'm just tired. Thanks for lunch, I said, picking up my purse. Don't forget to ping me later, he said. I smiled. I won't. I left the Eagle and got to the next train back to London. I opened the door of the kitchen entrance to the townhouse. The basement room smelled of yeast and curry. Hanya was beginning dinner already. She looked up as I came in. You're home early, Kia. I wasn't feeling well, so I left early. I flopped down at the kitchen table, watching Hanya work the dough for naan. Hanya stopped kneading, wiped the flour from her hands, and went to the pantry. She came out with a small analgesic spray and applied it to my neck. Go on, up to bed. I'll bring you some tea and scones later. The men won't be home until dinner time, so you'll have the afternoon to yourself. I'll come get you time for dinner. I gave her a weak smile. Thanks, Hanya. I appreciate it. She went back to her dough, but I didn't leave the table. Hanya, do you think Allah hates me? I asked. No, why would you say that? I keep getting all these opportunities that would be wonderful, but I know I can't take them. Who says you can't? She said. What? You know how it is for me, Hanya. Hanya didn't reply right away. She kneaded the dough a bit more vigorously, slapping it hard on the counter a few times. She formed it into a ball, dropped it into a bowl, and put a tea towel over it. Then she went over to another part of the kitchen and came over with a plate of bhaji. Here, eat some of these. It'll make you feel better. I dutifully obeyed. Hanya's bhajis were always the best. She sat down at the table. Now you listen to me, girl. I grew up in Kashmir and only got enough schooling to be able to read and to not let the vendors cheat me at the market. I thought my life was going to be really bad, but then Allah put your uncle in front of me. He gave me a job looking after you and keeping house, which brought me here. Allah gave me the opportunity to leave Kashmir, and I took it. My children don't have to worry about where their next meal comes from. Even though your uncle is a bad man, he does pay me. And between me and my husband's wages, it's enough. She paused for a minute, just gathering steam. But you, Allah gave you a brilliant mind. You went to school and got your degrees, despite whatever your Uncle Faisal thinks is your proper place. I know he let you do it because he didn't want to look bad in front of his British lords. I also know very well how he'll react if you want to do something for yourself. But Allah wouldn't have given you your mind and the friends you have, who I know care about you, or put me in your life if he didn't expect you to finally break free. I stared at Hanya, bhaji forgotten in my hand. Something seemed to click into place in my head, and I knew she was right. If you know my uncle is bad, why do you keep coming here? She patted my cheek and said, I stay for you, my dear. You needed a mother so desperately after coming here. I couldn't just leave you completely to Faisal. I'm an old woman now, and I can't do much to protect you from that man anymore, but I tried to give you hope and faith that Allah would send you a lifeboat. I took a deep breath. Nigel put my thesis in for the Trinity Station project. I'll find out at the end of the week if I got accepted or not. Well, Allah certainly made you a nice lifeboat, didn't he? I laughed. Inshallah. The older woman took my hand and looked me in the eyes. No, Kia, he did. I don't doubt it, and neither should you. Allah gave you the gifts to go to the stars. Don't doubt, my love, believe. You aren't a child anymore, after all. She stood up to stir the curry on the stove. I absently nibbled on the forgotten bhaji, chewing while I thought. That's right, I'm not a child anymore. I'm nearly 30. Anger and determination seemed to grow in my mind and fill my chest. I'll accept the position and tell Uncle I'm going whether he likes it or not. Allah protect me, but I'll do it. I finished the bhaji and went over to the stove. You know what'll happen if I tell him, right? I asked Hanya in a low tone. I do, Kia. I wish I didn't. And I wish I was strong enough to protect you. You've done what you could, and it was enough. You gave me faith. I sighed. You should go back to Cambridge early this week, Hanya. Tell Uncle something came up and leave Thursday. Don't come back here. Hanya carefully put the spoon down and hugged me. She had tears in her eyes, and so did I. I love you, Kia. I always thought of you as my daughter, even if you weren't of my blood. I smiled. I always thought of you as my mother, Hanya. I love you too. She put her hand on my head. Assalamu alaikum. I kissed her cheek. Wa alaikum assalam, I replied, and left the kitchen. Nigel and I were having a late lunch in the dining hall on Friday. I was nervous, not just because of the announcement, but because of what would happen later. I hadn't told Nigel yet that I was going to stand up to my uncle. I wanted to have the letter in hand. I smiled at him. Thanks for coming to lunch, Nigel. I miss you getting your email? Hell no. I sighed. You're that sure? He just gave me one of his mischievous smiles. Nigel, I said. I was good, I promise. I even recused myself when it came to the decision, honest. He was practically bouncing in his seat, which meant he didn't see Philip sneak up behind him, assassin style, until Philip slapped a piece of paper on his hand and held it there. What the hell? Nigel said. Philip took his hand away. There was a food ticket for the Eddie's dining hall on top of his hand. Contact poison? Philip smiled wildly. Ah, son of a bitch, I was so close to winning this year. Well, you might as well come and sit with us, you sly bastard. Philip laughed. Nope, I have a lecture in a few minutes. Good luck, Kia. Thanks? Nigel let us know about the proposal a couple of days ago, he said, then waved and left for class. I tried to give Nigel the look, but he just grinned. I shook my head. It was just then that my tablet buzzed. I took a deep breath and tapped open my email. I read it once, then twice, then a third time. Allahu Akbar, I said, and handed Nigel the tablet. To Kia-san at cambridge.ac.uk from Trinity Mission at jsc.nasa.gov. Subject, Project Acceptance for Deep Space Science Station. Dear Dr. Hassan, it is our pleasure to inform you that your project has been selected to be included on the Deep Space Science Station, D3S, also known as the Trinity Project. Attached, you will find the acceptance form, details of how your project will be funded, and the timetable for training and materials transfer, medical forms, and visa requirements. You must reply to this message with the acceptance form within 1 week to hold your place in the training program. Mission specialists are report to Houston for training on September 1st. Sincerely, D3S Science Committee. He read the message, then smiled from ear to ear. I told you, he said, handed me back the tablet, then hugged me. I started laughing. So, how do we get you there, he asked, suddenly serious. Allah sent me a lifeboat, I said, half to myself. I'll tell my uncle I'm going, then figure it out from there. Do you want me to come with you? Nigel asked, looking worried. It'll be fine, Nigel, you'll see, I said, sounding braver than I actually felt. You sure? I smiled. Yes, I'm sure. I'm going to go back to the lab and fill out all the forms and let my supervisor know. I jumped out of my seat, grabbed my purse, and ran out. Kia! I heard Nigel call after me, but I pretended like I didn't hear him. I had to do this myself. Allah gave me a lifeboat, and I would get on it one way or another. Hanya had done as I asked and left the day before. She left me plenty of food that I could heat up and serve to my uncle and cousins. My bravery started to ebb as it got closer to dinner time, so during my afternoon prayers I willed Allah to give me the strength. He must have heard me because I was able to serve dinner calmly and not sweat through my hijab. My cousins and uncle were talking about something to do with the family business, which wasn't interesting to me. I pushed the food around on my plate until the men demanded coffee. I went and got it for them, then sat down. I took a deep breath. Uncle? I said. What is it, Kia? He said with annoyance. My PhD work was accepted for the Trinity Project, and I'm going to Houston on September 1st to start astronaut training. The room went silent. All 4 men turned and looked at me like I had said something vulgar. All I could hear was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. What did you say? Uncle Faisal asked, in a surprisingly quiet voice. My project was accepted for Trinity Station. I'm going. Well, surely one of your cousins will be going with you, then. No. Uncle's face turned red. No niece of mine will go alone with godless infidels into space. He slammed his hand on the table. That's it, he yelled. I've indulged you enough with this schooling, allowing you freedoms you should never have had. I'm sending you to your grandmother in Kashmir. I've been talking to her recently, and she's found you a suitable husband who will teach you the proper place for a woman. I stood up. No, I yelled back. I am a grown woman, Uncle. I will not be married to some man I don't know who's probably old enough to be my grandfather. You dare say no to me? You're not my father. I fucking earned this, and I'll be damned if I let you take this from me. I'm not asking for your permission, Uncle. I'm telling you I'm leaving. I stood up and started to walk out of the room, trying to make it to the kitchen where I'd put my purse and a backpack. Don't you dare turn your back on me, my uncle shouted. I ignored him and kept walking down the hall. I heard him say something else, and suddenly hands were pulling me back down the hallway. No, let me go, I yelled as loud as I could. One of my cousins put his hand over my mouth, and I bit it. Bitch, I heard one of them say. I started to scream again as they brought me back into the dining room, but one of them put his hand on my throat and squeezed. I stilled, choking. I heard the unbuckling of a belt behind me. I tried to get free, but the cousins held on to me tightly. They turned me around, and Uncle Faisal put his face close to mine, saying quietly, It's a good thing that your new husband won't really care how you look, only that you can birth him sons. It's bad enough that you whore around with unbelievers. I have had enough of your disobedience. You have disgraced this family enough. I haven't disgraced anyone, I managed to croak out around my cousin's grip. It's you who have disgraced this family, Muhammad, and Allah. His face twisted in rage. Hold her, he ordered, and my cousins held more tightly to my arms. He didn't say anything more as his belt landed across my face. Chapter 4, Nigel. Shit, I thought as I watched Kia run out of the dining hall. Fuck, I think she's really gonna do it. Fear spiked in my chest. I knew exactly how the bastard was going to react when she defied him. I grabbed my backpack and ran to Jesus College. I barged into the door of the porter's lodge, not bothering to knock. "Jerry!" I yelled in panic, but no one answered immediately. The lights were still on, so I threw my pack down and paced until Jerry came through the door. "Well, hello, Nigel. Fancy a cuppa?" "Jerry," I said, talking fast so I was barely breathing. "Kia's project got into Trinity, and she got the letter 15 minutes ago while I was with her. I asked her if she wanted me to come with her to tell her uncle, but she said it was okay. She'd tell him herself. I asked her if she was sure, and she said something about Allah and lifeboats, and then went back to her office to respond to the acceptance letter, and fucking hell, I have a bad feeling about this." "Sit," Jerry ordered. I started to say, but Jerry just looked at me. "Sit," he ordered again. I did so, wringing my hands nervously and fidgeting. Jerry went over to his desk and tapped his tablet. "Hey, Jer, how's college life?" said another man's voice. "Not too bad, Will, not too bad. You remember I told you a while back at the pub about that girl from bonfire night?" "Oh, yeah, Kia, right?" Jerry nodded. "Well, we might have a situation tonight. Can you call the rest of the lads? We'll need Thomas, too." "For real? What kind of situation?" asked Will. "Yes, for real. Extraction. Abusive asshole, probably unarmed, but you never know," Jerry replied, stony-faced. "Understood. We'll be ready," he said, and the tablet beeped as he hung up. Jerry put the tablet down. "Well, what are you waiting for?" "Oh, right," I said. I pulled out my tablet and sent, "Kia got the news today. She says she's going to tell the bastard tonight that she's going. Will probably be bad." "Shit, right. I'll pull the strings here," texted Rafe. "Jerry in?" "Already put the word out," Jerry replied. "I'll bring you clothes and stuff for her, Rafe," Amina replied. "I'll have Philip call his cabbie friend." "Okay, folks. If I don't hear from her by midnight, I'll call it," I texted. I looked up and Jerry nodded. Everyone else texted in the affirmative. "That's all you can do, lad. Now we have to wait." I stood up and started pacing again. "I don't get it, Jerry. How can her family be so horrible? I mean, she's this brilliant woman with this amazing mind, and they treat her like she's nothing but dog shit. They should be worshipping the fucking ground she walks on. They should be happy for her, but instead she's probably going to get the shit beat out of her. Again!" Jerry didn't say anything, so I continued. "Why do these men do this shit? Don't they know it's 2220 and not 2020? Jesus fucking Christ." I sat back down on the couch, panting. Jerry stayed quiet for a while, then said, "You finished?" "Yeah, for now anyway," I said. "Good. Now listen. We don't know for sure what's going to happen when she goes home. We can't do anything unless she calls or she doesn't message you later. What you should be doing right now is getting online with the folks in Houston to let them know what's going on. I'm guessing she gets some sort of special status once she's sent them back the paperwork." A ray of hope entered my mind. Yes. She gets diplomatic status as soon as it's sent back. And she said she was going to fill out the forms right before she went home. Right. Do you mind if I call from here? Jerry shook his head. "Go right ahead. Tea?" I nodded and began to make some calls. Jerry brought me to a pub later and managed to get me to eat some food. "You'll do her no good if you're falling over from hunger. Eat." He was talking sense, so I did, but I had no idea what I'd eaten. I went back to my flat and packed a bag, which I dropped off with Amina to give to Rafe. I walked around the Jesus College grounds for a while, trying to get my nerves under control, then went back to the porter's lodge around 2300. When I knocked on the door, Jerry opened it, dressed all in black. "Come on in," he said. He closed the door behind me. "Jesus, I feel like I'm in a movie now," I said. Jerry chuckled. "Well, hopefully we'll have a happy ending. She hasn't messaged you?" I shook my head. "She usually does between 9 and 10. "Call it then. Let's not wait much longer," he said, reaching for his tablet. I pulled out mine and texted to the group. "We're going after her." "Got it," texted Rafe. "Plane's waiting at London City. Philip's got a cab ready. I'll be with him." "My friend at MI5 sent Jerry a package. Did he get it?" sent Amina. "Got it," Jerry replied. "Instructions were included." "Good. Get her the fuck out of there," Amina texted. "We will," I typed. "Will and the lads will be here in 5 minutes. It'll take us an hour to get there, though. Well, maybe 45 minutes with the way Will drives. Listen, I want you to promise me something while we're there." "Yeah?" "I want you to promise me that you'll do exactly what me and the lads tell you to do. I can smooth this over after we're done, but only if you don't go off half-cocked. Do you understand?" I stared at the man for a moment, and he stared back. The look in his eyes was something I couldn't describe, but I knew he meant business. I nodded. Yeah, okay, I promise. A horn sounded from the parking lot. That's them, let's go, he said. Jerry picked up a backpack from his desk, locked the door to his office, and led me to a black van waiting outside. The back doors opened, and another older man came out. Well, Jer, we've got everything we need, and Thomas has his big med kit. Ready? Yep. I'll sit up front with Will, since I have a little something that will let him drive faster, he said, and got in the passenger seat. Come on, then, we'll do introductions in the van, the man said. I followed him into the back, where another man was going through a bag. The first man closed the door, then pounded on the wall between the back of the van and the cab. The engine whirred as we left the lot. I'm Inesh. This here's Thomas. He's the medic. They both shook hands with me, and Inesh sat down. Hold on to your hats back there, yelled Will from the driver's seat. Thanks to your friend at MI5, Nigel, we've got green lights all the way to London, and a siren! Will sounded positively giddy. Thomas shook his head, and the van suddenly lurched and swayed as Will put his foot down and the siren wailed from the roof. Inesh laughed. He's always been a speed demon. Used to drive Formula One after the Indian Civil War, till he crashed and damaged his back. I think his Rosie was relieved after that. Well, until she left him, said Thomas. Inesh nodded. So is this Kia your girlfriend? He asked me. Girlfriend? No, it's not like that. She's more like a sister to me, but she's the only family I really have. Thomas nodded. Chosen family, hey? Yeah, I don't want to lose her. Hey, mate, don't worry. We'll get her out, said Inesh. Bastards like her uncle give Islam a bad name. His face became a mask. Thomas patted Inesh's shoulder, and then we held on for dear life as Will hit the motorway. We pulled up a couple doors down from Kia's uncle's townhouse. Jerry and Will came into the back after Will parked the van. They all put on balaclavas and then loaded up with weapons and a battering ram. My tablet buzzed as I waited. Cab around the corner and waiting, texted Rafi. I'll message when we have her, I replied. They have the cab ready, I said. Good, Jerry said. All business now. Thomas? Infrared satellites picking up 5 people in the house, 4 downstairs and 1 upstairs. The upstairs person's life signs are bad. I saw red in my vision for a moment and didn't hear all of what Jerry was saying in reply. Thomas, the porter said, stick with Nigel and find Kia, then get her in the cab. We'll take care of the others. The other men nodded. We left the van and quietly made our way to the townhouse. Jerry took the battering ram from Will, and someone got at the door, which partially shattered it as it flew open. Thomas held me back as the other 3 went into the house yelling. I heard crashing and more shouting for a few moments, then it stopped. Thomas! Nigel! Jerry yelled. Let's go, Thomas said, moving ahead of me into the house. Jerry was in the hallway with 1 man in arm lock and another on the floor, a puddle of blood around his head. I started to move towards him. Nigel, no, said Jerry. Go and find Kia. We'll deal with these arseholes. I took a breath. Is he? I asked. Jerry looked me in the eye. Nigel, go with Thomas. Nothing you need to see down here. Get Kia out of here and on that plane. Remember your promise. I nodded, wide-eyed, and followed Thomas up the stairs. Thomas had a scanner out, looking for Kia's room. Here, he said, and opened one of the bedroom doors. The light from the hallway showed a figure in the bed that wasn't moving. I ran past Thomas to the side of the bed. There was a bloody wreck that had Kia's face and who was barely breathing. Her clothes had been ripped in places, and her white hijab was full of blood. No, Kia! I cried, as I kneeled beside the bed and gently took her bloody hand. Thomas went around to the other side of the bed and waved a scanner over her. Fucking bastard, he said, as he dug through his bag for an injector, which he put to her throat. Right, I just gave her a strong sedative. Nothing major's broken, thank the gods, so we can move her without worrying about that. I don't know what kind of internal injuries she has, but I can keep her stable until we get to a proper hospital. Call your cab. I pulled out my tablet from my pocket and typed now into the group chat. I put it back, wrapped Kia in the quilt on the bed, then gently picked her up. She felt so light in my arms. Watch her head, Nigel. She's got a pretty severe concussion, and I can't rule out hairline fractures. Right, I said, and carefully made my way downstairs. I didn't hear the other men as we left the house, and right then I didn't care. Rafi was waiting outside, like he said he would be. He opened the door to the back of the cab. I ducked, easing in with Kia, then turned and sat down slowly so as not to jostle her. Rafe and Thomas followed. Rafe closed the door and told the cabbie to go. Philip was in the front passenger seat. He turned, catching sight of Kia's bloody face, then exclaimed, "Fucking hell, what did that cunt do to her?" Rafe finally really looked at Kia in the light of the streets. "Mein Kopf, diese Schafsäckel," he swore, reverting to Swiss German. "She's stable for now, but we need to get her medical attention ASAP," said Thomas. "There's only so much I can do for her with what I have." "Will she be okay for a couple of hours?" asked Rafe. Thomas nodded, though he looked worried. "I can keep her stable for a few hours, yes." Rafe nodded. "Then she'll get that help." I stayed quiet, holding Kia on my lap. I could feel her breathing, but it was shallow. The strange thing was that she had a kind of glow about her, like she did when she was praying. "Don't you dare leave me, Kia," I thought at her. "Allah, I don't know if you take prayers from a godless heathen, but please let her live. The world needs her. I need her. She's the only family I've got." I kept up the litany of prayer in my head all the way to the airport, where we pulled into the private jet lot. We all got out of the car, being careful not to jostle Kia, and Rafe went through the night entrance. "Listen, Marco's got to get back on duty, and I need to get back to Amina. Message us as soon as you get to Houston, okay?" Philip said. "Yeah, I will," I said. "I'll ping you as soon as we land. Thanks, mate." Philip nodded, got back in the cab, and they drove off. Rafe came back out. "Come on," he said, leading us through the building to the tarmac. I heard one of the night guards gasp as we brought Kia through, but no one said anything to us as we got into the plane. Thomas pulled out one of the sleeper seats and then motioned for me to lay Kia on it. I put her down gently, and Thomas tucked another blanket around her, strapping her into the seat. The co-pilot closed the door. Thomas and I buckled in for takeoff as Rafe was giving the pilot instructions. "Once we're out of EU airspace, switch to this transponder code, then leg it directly to Houston. Great Circle route." "Yes, Mr. Schmid." "Thanks, Eva. Sorry to make you work this late, but it's an emergency." The pilot looked back at where Kia was laying, anger on her face. "Not a problem, sir. We'll get her there." The co-pilot did the cabin checks, then asked, "Would you like anything to drink?" Thomas shook his head. Rafe took a look at me and said, "2 beers, Hans. Thank you." Hans handed me and Rafe the bottles, then went into the cockpit for takeoff. I held my beer in both hands as they started to shake. "Fucking hell," I said, and took a long swig of beer as the plane moved to the runway and took off. "Why are we moving so slow, Rafe?" I asked. "Amina's friend at MI5 has us pegged as a cargo plane while we're still in EU airspace. Once we're over international waters, we can hit Mach 5. He paused. "Listen, I had to pull a lot of strings to get this plane. One of the stipulations was that the Swiss government wants a hand in her project. They're willing to make up the difference with the Indochina bloc, so she won't have any problem with funding." I nodded. "She shouldn't have had any problems at all doing this. She should have been given everything she needed." I took another full pull from the bottle. "Fucking hell, Rafe, I knew the man was a cunt and I suspected that he beat her, but this?" Anger floated across Rafe's face. "I know, Nigel, but that asshole will be taken care of." He turned to Thomas. "Your folks will be fine too. MI5 and MI6 have got you covered." "I appreciate that," Thomas said. We were quiet for a long time. Thomas got up and ran his scanner over Kia. "No change," he said, and sat back down. I finished the beer, kicked off my shoes, and stretched out in one of the seats. Thomas picked up a tablet to read, keeping a close eye on his medical scanner. Rafe was tapping out something on his tablet too. I didn't think I could sleep, but maybe I figured I would just close my eyes for a moment. Next thing I knew, Rafe was shaking me awake. "We're in U.S. airspace. We have an escort," he said. "Thought you might want to see them." "Huh?" Rafe smiled. "Open the window." I did as he said. The sun was just coming up. Flying next to us was a matte black plane that basically looked like a black triangular hole in the sky. I put my nose up to the window. "Is that really an F-239? Holy shit, that's fucking awesome. Will they let me see one?" I said excitedly. I heard Rafe laugh. "Maybe, if you're a good boy." He paused. "Fucking engineers." Thomas chuckled too. I turned from the window. "Thanks, Rafe," I said quietly. "Hey, you needed something good after everything that happened tonight." He looked at Kia. "We should have gotten her out of there a long time ago." "She wasn't ready until now, Rafe," I said. "I suppose. I just wish she hadn't had to pay such a high price for her freedom." I nodded. "Yeah, me too." You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revginapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.